Hello, hello. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through writing metaphors. Recently, I read a dystopian novel which was fantastic. It was Displaced by Dan Hook, in case you're wondering. Before that, I had more or less sworn off of dystopian and utopian stories. I felt they were a waste of time after having been crushed so often by predictable, unlikable characters, storytelling which meandered, and uninteresting ways of telling the plot that was so prevalent in the 2010s. Not to mention how many of them are depressing slogs which expand out unnecessarily for padding word count or episode length. While Dan's story rekindled my interests, so here's my list of my top 7 favorite dystopian tropes from a time when I used to enjoy reading them. Number 1, our modern knowledge is supreme. I read a lot of science fiction or fantasy where there's a new device or a spell or invention which we as readers don't know what it is. It might be something that's commonplace in the world that's established, yet we need to have it explained to us. I love when that role gets reversed, where we are far in the future where some modern convenience is entirely forgotten. There was a scene where a character picked up an odd-looking egg, and from that description alone, I had a good visual of what it was, and was counting down 5 seconds in my head, even before they described the ring attached to it, and they then pulled that off. I was excited because I know something the characters don't, something which is going to end with explosive results. I won't say what happened in the story or which story it was, though it's kind of obvious based on what I've said so far. But it was a great payoff moment. In a futuristic dystopian world, modern inventions are forgotten relics. We recognize grenades or other weapons from their vague descriptions immediately. We also recognize how much danger the characters don't know they're in as Chekhov's gun gets loaded. That tension makes me want to turn the page to find out what happens next. Number 2, no more division. When survival is not a guarantee, all the many ways which we found to separate and isolate ourselves dissolve. That's not always the case, but a dystopian society shows what people can do when they don't hate one another for no reason. Granted, dystopian societies aren't free from crime or malice. There's plenty of looting and worse atrocities, but there's hope in these stories too that the barriers between us can break down because hating someone for being different hinders us from what we could be. Number 3, modern government is bad. Stories are a perfect chance for allegory. The Hunger Games, The Handmaid's Tale, or Idiocracy showcase, or in Idiocracy's case, poke fun at corruption within government and how society accepts its rule. These stories hold up a magnifying glass to current systems or problems in a way which make us rethink them. Take Idiocracy. That's a movie about how humans become less intelligent over time until only idiots are left to lead us. They misinterpret all of our modern rules and do stupid things like using Gatorade to water plants. Unfortunately, many of the comedic beats meant as parody in the early 2000s have become prophetic. The same is true for how The Handmaid's Tale shows unfair laws and in general how society treats women and reproductive rights. Thus, reading a good dystopian story makes us question the reality we take for granted. That is one of the best things a fictional story can do. Make us think. Number 4, mirror. Because my last point was so relevant, I'm going to say it a different way. Much like showing the flaws in seizing or abusing power, dystopian stories hold up a mirror to ourselves, our daily actions, and our societal norms, which can allow us to recognize when they're harmful, confusing, or otherwise absurd. For example, I find it ironic and mind-boggling how 1984 is now a banned book. Within 1984, the government burns books and paraphernalia which could question its regime and show other ways of doing things. In some ways, our modern society is doing the same. Through the lore of the story, we see how history can be lost or covered up. Moreover, we as readers recognize how fantasy could become reality. Number 5, warning signs. Life is perfect. We wake up, we go to work, we sacrifice an animal, the great Cthulhu, you get my point. Characters in a dystopian utopia live in an ideal society. There are no problems. Their day-to-day concerns are all taken care of, except there are cracks. We get hints about people suffering behind the scenes so the elite can live carefree. The world is standing on the edge of a cliff, and there is immense tension in what will get the people to recognize the problems right under their feet, and eventually push society off the ledge. We can see each of these issues as an outsider in what society has normalized, and follow the character as they discover them too. Number 6, love. This is a surprising one for me, as I think in most cases romance is written terribly. Yet what other reason is there for characters to forge on when society has collapsed? Love, companionship, living outside ourselves are pure ideals which make the character want to suffer through hell every day and not give up. Looking ahead to next week with dystopian tropes I don't like, this will make another appearance. And lastly, number 7, differences. Yeah, I know my second point was how we should minimize the differences between us, yet that doesn't mean we don't have unique experiences or skills. Whether it's a historian with a knack for dead languages like English, or a car mechanic able to fix any ancient modern machine, their knowledge is vital. In many dystopian stories, this is the one person on the planet who has devoted their life to this research. Or it's someone from the modern era who has unthawed in the far future. I have different skills than you do. What if one of us were the only person who retained the secret to humanity's survival? I don't like stories where the character or hero is chosen. However, I do thoroughly enjoy when somebody steps up because there's no one else. Those are my 7 favorite dystopian tropes. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Writing to Write. If you enjoyed my thoughts on how to make the end of the world a fun reading experience, please press those like and subscribe buttons. Let me know in the comments what tricks you use to create the ideal dystopian story. Do you agree with my opinions, or is everything I said wrong? I post my running and writing progress on Instagram and Twitter as Running to Write, so be sure to follow me and join in with your own thoughts. Don't forget to sign up for the Writing to Write monthly newsletter if you want regular updates on my story musings, pitfalls, and lessons learned. Much like last week, at least according to how I'm recording these episodes, this was brought to us by the one and only Richard Holiday. He is still awesome and is the one who got me hooked on Dan Hook's dystopia, Displaced. As I mentioned earlier, I had largely given up on reading dystopias, but gave this one a try on Richard's recommendation. I'm glad I did, so you have him to thank for this and next week's topic. If you want your praises likewise heralded at the end of my videos, check out my Ko-fi page to sponsor an episode. See you next time. Until then, read a dystopian story to see how we can steer our present away from their mistakes.